Beneath the shimmer of the waves, where sunlight lingers for only a few hundred feet before surrendering to the deep, there is a world that few human eyes have ever seen. Before we descend together into this hidden realm, let me gently invite you. If you find comfort in these calm journeys of science and story, consider subscribing to this channel. It helps us continue creating these peaceful explorations and ensures you can return whenever you wish, like a familiar shore waiting beyond the tide. And now, with that soft promise above us, we drift down into the midnight zone, a place where darkness reigns eternal, and time seems to dissolve into the slow rhythm of drifting currents. As we imagine this descent, let us close our eyes and drift downward, as though carried on a gentle current. At first, the waters are familiar, turquoise near the shore, playful and bright. Fish dart in silver flashes, corals sway like gardens in the shallows. But with every meter we sink, the light fades. The colors grow muted, then dim, until the last traces of daylight dissolve into an inky, endless blue. It is as though we are slipping into another world, a cathedral of stillness, where silence stretches on forever. Here, sound carries differently. The groan of distant tectonic plates, the calls of whales far above, even the slow crackle of icebergs miles away. They travel through the water like echoes from forgotten dreams. But for the most part, there is only quiet. A quiet so soft it feels like a blanket, wrapping around you, inviting you deeper into rest. The water itself changes as we sink. The warmth of the surface gives way to cold, a chill that grows sharper with depth. Pressure, too, begins to build. With each 100 meters, the weight of the sea increases, pressing in on all sides. Down here, in the midnight silence, pressure is measured not in atmospheres we can breathe, but in tons upon tons of water above, bearing down on everything that dares to live here. And yet, life does exist. Fragile, glowing specks appear in the darkness, bioluminescent plankton, tiny drifters that pulse with blue-green light. Their glow is soft and fleeting, like sparks from a fire carried by the current. If we allow ourselves to drift further, we might see the slow passing of strange creatures. A jellyfish, its body clear as glass, trailing tendrils that shimmer like stars. A lanternfish, its scales glinting with tiny dots of light, carrying its own constellation through the black. The deep ocean is a night sky inverted, filled not with distant suns, but with living lights. Each pulse a survival strategy in a world without dawn. And yet, even with these scattered glimmers, the impression here is still silence. The kind of silence not empty but full, like a page waiting for words, or a dream waiting to form. For millions of years, this has been the backdrop against which life has persisted in secret, a hush that allows every breath, every flick of a fin, every adaptation to carry profound meaning. Scientists call this place the bathypelagic zone, though the name feels too clinical for the wonder it inspires. It is sometimes known more poetically as the midnight zone, where sunlight never penetrates. In these depths, the ocean is not a place of scarcity, but of transformation. For though food is rare and warmth is absent, creatures have learned to adapt with patience, crafting ways of living that seem almost like whispered miracles. Imagine, for a moment, the patience of a fish that must wait in stillness for weeks before prey drifts near, or the delicate engineering of an organism that captures faint chemical traces in the water making a feast of molecules too small for us to see. Every being down here is a master of quiet endurance, surviving not by speed or abundance, but by listening to the silence and taking from it just enough to live. It is easy to think of this silence as emptiness, but in truth, it is the foundation upon which the drama of the ocean unfolds. Above us, currents swirl and tides shift, hurricanes roar and ships sail. But here, in the midnight silence, those events are only echoes. Time feels slower, more deliberate, as though the ocean itself is encouraging us to rest, to breathe, to be. Even human explorers who have come here, in submarines or with remote cameras, describe the experience as humbling. There is no sense of place in the usual sense. There are no trees to mark the land, no horizon to anchor the eye, no sky to measure distance. Instead, there is the infinite sameness of water, stretching in every direction. It is said that when you look out into the deep, it feels like gazing into eternity, a darkness so vast it becomes its own kind of beauty. And as we linger here, drifting deeper into the quiet, I'd like to offer a gentle invitation. If you find comfort in these journeys, if you'd like to continue exploring the wonders of science through calm storytelling, you might consider subscribing to this channel. It helps us keep creating these soothing voyages and ensures you can return whenever you wish to drift again into the mysteries of the sea or the cosmos or the story of life itself. Like a lanternfish carrying its light through the dark, your support helps keep this journey glowing. And yet, this is only the beginning of our story. For hidden within this silence, buried in the folds of the seafloor, are places where the quiet breaks, places where the earth itself whispers in plumes of heat and minerals. These are the hydrothermal springs, the cradles of deep-sea life. But before we arrive there, we must rest a while in the midnight silence to understand the stillness from which life can bloom. Picture yourself floating now, suspended in the deep. No need to swim, no need to struggle. The water holds you. Above, the faintest memory of light is long gone. Below, the ocean floor still waits, far deeper than imagination can easily grasp. Around you, nothing but the occasional flicker of bioluminescent sparks, like fireflies drifting through an eternal night. It is calm here, endlessly calm. And that calmness seeps into you, slowing your breath, quieting your mind. The creatures of this place are companions in quiet. The vampire squid, with its deep crimson skin and cloak-like arms, drifts slowly, conserving energy. Its name may sound fearsome, but it is a gentle survivor, feeding not on blood, but on the delicate snow of organic particles that falls from above, what scientists call marine snow. This marine snow is the ocean's gentle snowfall, flakes of dead plankton, fish scales, and organic fragments, sinking slowly, endlessly through the water column. To us it may sound unappetizing, but down here, it is the nourishment of life. Marine snow is patient. It takes weeks, sometimes months, to fall from the sunlit surface to the depths of the midnight zone. And as it drifts, it becomes the lifeblood of the creatures waiting in silence. Every flake a story, every particle a remnant of something once alive, now transformed into sustenance for others. It is recycling on a grand, cosmic scale, nothing wasted, everything repurposed. The silence of the midnight ocean is not absence. It is a canvas upon which the smallest gestures of life carry profound significance. A fish's faint flick of its tail, a jellyfish's lazy pulse, a shrimp's delicate search for food. All these movements take on the gravity of survival. And in their patience, we can hear a lesson that even in silence, life endures. Even in darkness, beauty thrives. And so, as we rest in this chapter of the story, let us breathe with the rhythm of the sea. Inhale the calm, exhale the tension. Allow the ocean's midnight silence to carry you into a deeper stillness. Ahead, there will be movement and wonder, heat and creation when we arrive at the hydrothermal springs. But for now, we are floating, resting in the hush of eternity, where the only sound is the soft beating of your heart, echoing like a companion in the deep. As we drift deeper into the ocean's embrace, time seems to lose its edges. Minutes stretch, hours blur, and all that remains is the steady pulse of the sea. The darkness is complete now, a velvet curtain that closes out the memory of sunlight. And yet, somewhere far below, there are faint stirrings, hints of warmth, of movement, of something remarkable waiting to be discovered. These are the whispers from the seafloor, messages rising slowly through miles of still water, telling us that silence is never truly empty. The ocean floor, though hidden from our sight, is not a static place. It is alive with the restless movements of the earth itself. Here, tectonic plates shift and grind, vast slabs of the planet's crust meeting like the shoulders of giants. Sometimes they slide quietly past one another, sometimes they collide and buckle, and sometimes they pull apart, opening gaps that stretch like long, jagged scars across the seabed. It is along these scars, mid-ocean ridges, that the whispers begin. Imagine, if you will, the soundless conversation of stone and fire. Beneath the ocean crust, molten rock surges upward, carrying the Earth's hidden heat. At the places where the crust thins, this molten energy rises close to the seafloor, warming the rock and water alike. The ocean, so cold and crushing at these depths, meets the restless fire from below. The result is not chaos, but creation. Hydrothermal springs, vents where the deep earth and the deep ocean meet. The whispers from the seafloor are not spoken in words, but in plumes. Plumes of mineral-rich water, heated to extremes, drift upward into the cold abyss. To our imagination, they might appear like smoke rising from unseen chimneys, or like the breath of the earth itself, sighing into the dark. Each plume carries with it messages, whispers, from the ancient interior of the planet. Iron, sulfur, manganese, copper, and other elements long hidden within rock are released into the sea, the site of such vents. If we could witness them directly, is startling against the calm backdrop of the abyss. Out of the blackness, towers rise, built from minerals that precipitate as the superheated water cools. Some are slim and fragile, others tall and massive, reaching several stories high. From their tips, clouds of shimmering fluid pour into the water column. It is as if the ocean floor itself has found a voice, murmuring softly in the language of chemistry and heat. The human eye, accustomed to the play of sunlight and sky, this world is otherworldly. The vents flicker with shimmering waves of heat, distorting the water around them. Minerals sparkle faintly as they settle, building chimneys grain by grain. If one listens with the mind's ear, it is easy to imagine these plumes as whispers, not loud proclamations, but gentle hints of stories unfolding where few would think to look. These whispers are not only geological, they are invitations. They beckon life to gather, to adapt, to thrive. In a world that otherwise seems barren and silent, hydrothermal springs create oases. Around them, the water grows rich with chemicals that, to the right organisms, are as nourishing as sunlight. This is the quiet paradox of the deep. In darkness and silence, life flourishes where the earth breathes its mineral whispers into the sea. For a long time, humans did not know such places existed. The seafloor, until a few decades ago, was imagined as a desert, dark, lifeless, endless. It was not until 1977, when a research vessel called the Norse sent its submersible, Alvin, into the Galapagos Rift, that these whispers were finally heard. What scientists saw astonished them. They expected bare rock and still water. Instead, they found towers venting black plumes, and around them, clusters of giant tubeworms, crabs, clams, and fish, an entire ecosystem hidden in the dark that it was as if the ocean floor had been holding a secret for billions of years, waiting patiently for us to listen. Those first whispers changed our understanding of life itself. They told us that ecosystems need not depend on sunlight. They showed us that energy could come from the Earth's interior, and that life could bloom in places once thought impossible. The whispers of the seafloor had spoken, and science was forever altered. But beyond the science, beyond the discoveries, there is a quieter wonder here. To imagine the ocean floor as a living, breathing presence is to feel the earth in a more intimate way. Each vent is like a sigh, a whisper rising through the cold water to say, I am alive. I am changing. I am giving. The ocean listens, and in turn, it nurtures life in ways we are only beginning to understand. Think of the plumes as messages written in drifting ink. The black smokers, with their dark, smoky effusions, carry metals and sulfides. The white smokers, cooler and gentler, release lighter minerals, shimmering like ghostly breath. Each tells a different story, each carries a different tone. Together, they weave a chorus of whispers across the seafloor, subtle yet persistent, ancient yet ongoing that as we drift closer in our imagination, we can feel the difference in the water. Near the vent, it is warmer, alive with tiny particles. The silence is still there, but it has texture now, as though the ocean itself is humming softly. Tiny microbes, invisible to our eyes, drift through this water, catching hold of the minerals and gases. They are the first to listen to the whispers, and in their quiet way, they transform them into food, into energy, into life. The whispers ripple outward. Where there is food, there are larger beings, worms, clams, shrimp, all gathering around these towers, thriving in a place where there is no sunlight. To them, the whispers are not mysterious. They are home. They are sustenance. They are the rhythm of existence. For us, as we drift here in thought, the whispers can be something else, a lullaby from the earth, a reminder that even in silence, there are voices if we learn to hear them. The seafloor is not silent stone, but a storyteller. Its stories are not told in human speech, but in heat and chemistry, in the shimmering of water, in the slow building of chimneys from grains of mineral dust. And as you listen, here in the dark, your own breath may fall into rhythm with the whispers. Inhale slowly, like the rising plume. Exhale gently, like the settling mineral dust. The ocean floor continues its soft conversation, and you, too, are part of its audience, a guest in a story billions of years in the making. These whispers from the seafloor are only the beginning. Ahead, the conversation grows stronger. We will hear of the marriage of fire and water, of black smokers and white chimneys, of life weaving miracles from minerals. But for now, let us rest here, suspended in the abyss, listening to the soft murmur of the earth beneath the sea, telling us its secrets in a language older than time. Beneath the still surface of the sea, far below the reach of sunlight, lies a place where opposites meet. Here in the deepest shadows, the ocean floor stretches out like an endless desert of stone, quiet and seemingly lifeless. Yet if you listen closely to the language of the earth, you can hear something stirring. The planet itself is breathing through cracks in its skin, releasing warmth from its hidden heart. Imagine the ocean floor not as a silent flatland, but as a place alive with tension. The Earth's crust here is thin, pulled apart by slow but mighty forces. Through those rifts and fractures, seawater slips downward, drawn into the planet's rocky bones. The water travels deep into a secret world where stone melts into liquid fire. It is here, beneath our feet, that the restless heat of magma waits. Not the kind of fire that leaps into the sky as a volcano, but a quiet furnace, smoldering in the darkness. When seawater meets this buried fire, something astonishing happens. The icy cold water, chilled by the endless dark, is transformed by heat. It rises above boiling, but it does not become steam, for the weight of the ocean presses down with unimaginable force, keeping it liquid. In this strange alchemy, water is reborn, hot, heavy, and filled with the minerals it gathers from the rocks around it. Iron, sulfur, copper, and silica dissolve into the fluid, making it richer, heavier, stranger than the water that first descended. And then, as though called back to the surface, this altered water begins its return journey. It surges upward through the cracks, still superheated, until it bursts out of the seafloor in a slow and steady plume. It does not come forth as fire, nor as a boiling cloud, but as something gentler, like smoke drifting through water. These plumes curl upward in the darkness, a ghostly breath exhaled by the planet itself. Scientists call them hydrothermal vents, but the name hardly captures their poetry. Imagine instead that the seafloor has learned to whisper, sending warm streams of mineral-rich water into the midnight ocean. Around each opening, minerals settle and harden, building spires and chimneys. Over years, even centuries, these chimneys rise higher, twisting and branching like the towers of some forgotten city. Some glow faintly with the shimmering particles in their flow, casting a dreamlike aura across the deep the eye of a diver. If one could journey this far, these vents might look like underwater geysers, rising in slow motion. Their plumes may be black as smoke or white as mist, depending on the minerals carried in the flow. They black smokers, as they are called, send out dark, rich clouds, while white smokers exhale paler, softer plumes. Together, they form a landscape both eerie and breathtaking, as if the ocean floor itself had learned to dream. But what is most extraordinary is not the vent itself. It is what gathers around it. In the vast, cold desert of the abyss, where almost nothing stirs, the vents become oases. They are warmth in a world of cold and nourishment in a place that has never seen the sun. Just as travelers once gathered around campfires in the ancient night, creatures of the deep are drawn to these hydrothermal springs. Here, life finds a way where it should not exist. Think of the strangeness of it. On the surface, all life we know depends on sunlight. Plants grow from its energy, and animals feed on plants or on each other in a chain that always begins with the sun. But here, miles beneath the waves, there is no light. The sun's warmth cannot reach, and yet, the vents create a different kind of beginning. Life here does not drink from sunlight, but from the chemicals rising out of the earth. Microbes, tiny, unseen builders of worlds, use the minerals from the vents as fuel, drawing energy from sulfur and iron the way plants draw energy from light. They become the foundation of a new food chain, one that belongs not to the stars above, but to the fire below. Around these microbes gather stranger beings still. Tubeworms, pale and ghost-like, extend their long, delicate bodies from protective shells. They have no mouths, no stomachs, no need to eat, for they harbor inside them the very microbes that thrive on vent minerals. Like living partnerships, the worms and microbes share life, one feeding the other. Shrimp with eyes adapted to the faint glow of the vents cluster around the chimneys, while crabs scuttle across the rocks, harvesting what they can. Even fish, specially adapted to the darkness, hover nearby, drawn into this pocket of warmth and nourishment. The vents, born from fire meeting water, become the foundation of an entire world. A world that thrives without sunlight, where life rises from chemistry alone to IT, is a reminder that what seems impossible is often only unseen. Fire and water, two forces we think of as enemies, are here companions, weaving together a stage where life can unfold. Heat that should destroy instead nurtures. Minerals that seem lifeless instead nourish. And the deep ocean, which to us feels like emptiness, reveals itself as a cradle, holding something precious in its stillness. Take a moment to picture this scene in your mind: a black ocean, vast and eternal, pierced only by the rising glow of vents. Chimneys reach upward like silent towers. Clouds of mineral-rich water drift into the dark. Around them, creatures gather, pale and luminous, moving slowly in the quiet. It is a world that does not ask for our eyes, and yet exists in its own quiet beauty, whether we see it or not. And as you let that image linger, notice how calm it feels. The slow rising of the plumes, the gentle curling of smoke like water, the creatures drifting in unhurried motion. Even here, where fire and water meet, there is no chaos, no explosion, but only balance. The earth exhales, the ocean receives, and life begins. Perhaps that is what the vents are teaching us, that harmony can emerge from what we think of as opposites, that in stillness and in darkness, creation can quietly take root. And as we close our eyes, letting the picture fade into the soft glow of imagination, we are reminded of how vast and mysterious our world is. A world that still keeps secrets in its deepest places, secrets whispered gently in the meeting of fire and water. Far beneath the ocean's restless waves, where light has never fallen, the earth builds cathedrals of stone. They do not rise toward the sky, but toward the dark roof of the sea, their spires hidden from every eye. These are not built by human hands, nor by the slow carving of rivers and wind. They are born instead from a meeting of heat and water, from minerals carried upward in invisible breath. And together, they create a landscape as strange and beautiful as anything imagined in myth. When the superheated waters of the vents rise into the icy cold of the abyss, they undergo a transformation. Each plume, carrying minerals gathered in the earth's hidden chambers, cools as it escapes. The dissolved metals and chemicals, once invisible, suddenly solidify. They fall back around the vent's opening, layering and building. Slowly, with each exhalation, the seafloor shapes towers, columns, and chimneys. They grow like living things, though made only of stone. Over time, entire fields of these chimneys appear, rising side by side, some thin as reeds, others thick as ancient trees. In the dark, they look like cities forgotten by time, sculpted by the breath of the planet. And though silent, they have names given by those who study them. Some are called black smokers, for the plumes they release, dark and dense as smoke from a fire. Others are called white chimneys, their streams softer, paler, like drifting mist. Together, they create a contrast as vivid as night and day in a place where no sunlight shines. The black smokers are perhaps the most dramatic. Their waters are heated to astonishing temperatures, sometimes over 400 degrees Celsius, though they remain liquid under the weight of the ocean above. As these waters escape, they are thick with metals, iron, copper, zinc, and sulfides. When they meet the cold seawater, these minerals crystallize instantly, forming the dark, smoky clouds that billow upward. It looks like fire burning underwater, though no flame flickers here. Instead, it is the earth exhaling its hidden riches into the sea. These minerals fall back and accumulate, layer upon layer, until the vents themselves grow taller. Some of the chimneys can reach heights of 20 meters, twisting and branching like towers of ash and stone. To gaze upon one is to imagine a castle built not by time's erosion, but by constant renewal, stone forming from water. As if the ocean itself were weaving architecture out of breath. In contrast, the white chimneys exhale something gentler. Their waters, though still hot, carry different minerals, barium, calcium, and silica. When these meet the seawater, they form pale deposits that drift outward like ghostly wisps. Their chimneys shine with lighter colors, sometimes white, sometimes tinged with cream or faint blues. If black smokers resemble fiery furnaces, white chimneys feel like dreamlike fountains, exhaling softly into the abyss. Together, these two kinds of vents shape the seafloor into a surreal mosaic. Black and white towers stand beside each other, smoke and mist rising into the dark. The landscape feels alive, breathing in its own slow rhythm, its beauty hidden far from the sunlit world above. For scientists who first descended to witness them, it was like stepping into another planet. The familiar rules of the surface no longer applied. Here, fire and stone gave rise not to destruction, but to creation, and though these chimneys seem lifeless, they are far from empty. Within their walls, microbes cling, feeding on the very chemicals that flow through the vents. Some live inside the porous rock, sheltered by the minerals themselves, using sulfur and iron as energy. Others float in the plumes, drifting upward on clouds of minerals, each one a spark of life too small to see. To them, the vents are not hostile, but a gift, an endless fountain of nourishment. It is strange to think that what we would consider poison, sulfurous fumes, heavy metals, boiling heat, becomes the foundation for life here. Yet in the deep ocean, life is not fragile. It is resourceful, resilient, and willing to bloom wherever conditions allow. Around black smokers and white chimneys, entire ecosystems assemble, each creature linked to the strange chemistry of the vents. Imagine walking through a silent forest at night. its trees glowing faintly in the moonlight, its ground warm beneath your feet, its air filled with drifting mist. That is the feeling of the vent fields. Though no sound reaches the ear, the place hums with life, with energy, with the quiet labor of microbes turning minerals into food, and of larger creatures waiting patiently in their shadow. The vents are more than just strange curiosities of the ocean floor. They remind us that the earth is alive beneath us, always moving, always creating. The chimneys grow and collapse, rise and fall, in a cycle as steady as breathing. New vents open, old ones close, just as fires are lit and extinguished on land. And within this rhythm, life takes its chance, growing where no sunlight shines, proving again and again that existence will bloom wherever there is even the faintest thread to cling to. As you drift deeper into this thought, picture once more the black and white chimneys rising side by side, one fierce and shadowed, its plume dark and heavy, the other gentle, its plume pale and soft. They are contrasts, yet companions, standing together in the same landscape, fed by the same earth, whispering into the same ocean. Perhaps they are a lesson, too, that opposites do not always clash. Sometimes they stand together, shaping beauty in their difference. In the quiet of the abyss, the black smokers and white chimneys exhale in harmony, their breath rising like slow smoke toward the roof of the sea. And as we close our eyes, we might let their rhythm guide our own, steady, patient, eternal, carrying us toward rest, as the ocean carries its endless dreams. On the surface of our world, life begins with the sun. Its golden light feeds the forests, stirs the oceans, and warms the air we breathe. Plants stretch toward it, weaving food from its energy, and animals, in turn, feed upon the plants. Every creature we know on land and in shallow seas belongs, in one way or another, to this great chain that begins with sunlight. But far below, in the eternal midnight of the deep ocean, there is no sunrise. No beam of light pierces the water. The world is dark, cold, and silent. By all we once believed, it should have been empty, a desert where nothing could endure. For how could life exist without the touch of the sun? And yet, it does. Here, around the hydrothermal vents, a new kind of life has taken root. Instead of drawing strength from light, it draws strength from chemistry itself. This is a world of chemosynthesis, a quiet miracle where microbes take the sulfur and iron carried in the vent's plumes and turn them into energy. They are like alchemists, conjuring nourishment from minerals, weaving life out of the earth's breath. Imagine them, too small to see, yet abundant as dust motes in a sunbeam. Except here there is no beam, only darkness. They cling to the chimneys, drift in the warm clouds of water, and line the seafloor like invisible gardens. To them, the vents are not hostile. They are generous. What seems toxic to us, sulfur, heavy metals, superheated water, becomes food, warmth, and life. Around these microbes gather the pioneers of the deep. Long, pale tube worms rise from the rocks, their bodies encased in slender shells. They have no mouths to feed, no stomachs to digest, no eyes to see. Instead, inside them live entire colonies of the very microbes that thrive on vent minerals. The worms and the microbes are partners, bound together in life. The worm offers shelter. The microbes offer food. Together, they form one of the strangest and most beautiful partnerships in nature. Nearby, swarms of shrimp move in restless clusters. Their bodies gleam faintly in the dim glow of the vents, their eyes adapted to catch the faintest traces of light. Some species have special reflective patches on their backs, like tiny mirrors, guiding them toward the warm plumes. To them, the vents are lighthouses in the endless dark. Crabs scuttle along the stones, their legs moving in delicate precision. They feed on the microbes, on the shrimp, on whatever they can catch. Fish with ghostly forms hover nearby, some with jaws designed for sudden strikes, others drifting patiently, conserving their energy in the heavy stillness. Each creature finds its place, each life woven into the quiet tapestry of the vents, and all of them depend, in some way, on the invisible builders, the microbes who drink from the earth itself. This world, without sunlight, shows us something profound. Life does not need a single source. It is not bound only to the skies. It can bloom wherever energy flows, whether from above in light or from below in heat. It is as though the universe whispers, through these vents, that the possibilities for life are greater than we imagine. Scientists who first discovered these vent communities in the late 1970s were astonished. Until then, no one believed such ecosystems could exist. To find lush fields of worms, shrimp, and crabs thriving in complete darkness was to open a door into a new understanding of life. It was proof that Earth holds secrets in places we thought barren, and that life is not fragile but adaptable, inventive, and deeply resilient. And so, as you drift deeper into this thought, imagine yourself standing in that silent landscape. Before you rise the chimneys, dark and pale, exhaling their endless plumes. Around you, creatures move in slow, graceful rhythms, as though time itself has slowed. The water is heavy, the pressure immense, yet everything here belongs. Nothing is hurried, nothing is wasted. Life flows quietly, without sunlight, without haste. Let that image linger. A garden in the dark, nurtured not by stars but by the earth's own hidden warmth. A reminder that even in places that seem impossible, life will find a way to endure. And perhaps, as you close your eyes, you might carry this thought with you, that the universe is wider, kinder, and more surprising than we know, and that even in darkness, there is always the possibility of growth. In the hush of the abyss, where sunlight never arrives and the cold presses against everything, the smallest of beings perform the grandest of miracles. They are unseen to the eye, invisible even to the careful diver, yet they are the true architects of the vent worlds. Without them, no worm would grow, no shrimp would swarm, no crab would crawl. They are the foundation, the secret spark in the darkness. These are the microbes, tiny, single-celled beings that live where no larger creature could survive. To us, they may seem humble, almost unnoticeable. But what they do in these deep oceans is nothing short of alchemy on land. In our sunlit world, we are used to life that feeds on light. Plants, trees, grasses, each one spreads its leaves to capture the golden rays of the sun, turning them into energy through photosynthesis. The green of the forests, the richness of the meadows, all begins with sunlight transformed into sugar. Animals, in turn, eat the plants, and the chain of life stretches outward. But what happens when there is no light? In the eternal midnight of the deep, the rules must change. And so the microbes here have written their own rulebook. Instead of sunlight, they take in the chemicals that flow from the vents: hydrogen sulfide, iron, methane, even gases that to us would be poison. They use these as fuel, breaking bonds, rearranging atoms, and turning them into the energy of life. This process is called chemosynthesis. To imagine it, picture a quiet kitchen in the dark, where a cook has no fire, no flame, and no lamp. Instead, they take raw stone and gas and, with a careful hand, transform them into a nourishing feast. The microbes are those cooks, working in silence, weaving food from minerals and breath. The key ingredient, most often, is hydrogen sulfide, the same gas that smells of rotten eggs when it rises on land. To us, it is unpleasant, even toxic. But to the microbes of the vents, it is pure treasure. They take in the sulfide, combine it with oxygen in the seawater, and release energy. With that energy, they build sugars, the molecules of life. They store them within their tiny bodies, and in doing so, they become food themselves for others. Some microbes live free, drifting in the warm plumes, carried upward by the vent's breath. Others cling to the rocky chimneys, painting them with invisible films of life. Still others live in partnerships, housed inside the bodies of larger creatures. Tubeworms, for example, host entire colonies of chemosynthetic microbes within their tissues. The worms cannot feed themselves in any other way, for they have no mouths and no stomachs. Instead, they offer the microbes a safe home, a steady supply of vent chemicals carried by their blood, and in return, the microbes feed them from within. It is a symbiosis so complete that the worm and the microbe are almost one being, each impossible without the other. This is the quiet magic of the vents, that something so small can sustain something so large. The microbes, delicate as dust, invisible as breath, weave an entire ecosystem from chemistry. Shrimp, crabs, and fish gather because the worms thrive. The worms thrive because the microbes live within them. And the microbes live because the Earth exhales its gases from the hidden heat below. When scientists first discovered this process, it changed our understanding of life itself. No longer could we say that sunlight was the only beginning. Here was proof that life could arise from the planet's inner chemistry, fed by stone and gas instead of stars. If it could happen here, in the depths of our own ocean, then perhaps it could happen elsewhere too, in the icy moons of Jupiter, in the seas hidden beneath Saturn's rings, even in worlds far beyond our sight. The vents became more than places of curiosity. They became windows into the possibilities of the universe. But let us return, gently, to the microbes themselves. Imagine them now, clustering in invisible gardens. Each one is a spark, a speck, a single thread. Yet together, they form endless tapestries across the vents. They shimmer faintly in the currents, their numbers so vast they form mats that coat the rocks. Some glow faintly when disturbed, like soft fireflies of the deep. Others remain still, waiting patiently for the next wave of chemicals to wash over them. It is humbling to remember that these tiniest of beings are also the most ancient. Long before plants stretched toward the sun, long before animals walked the land, microbes had already learned to draw energy from the earth itself. Some scientists believe that life on Earth may have first begun in places like these, in vent fields where minerals and water met. If that is so, then chemosynthesis is not just a curiosity of the deep. It is the echo of our own origin story. The way life first learned to kindle itself in the dark. As you imagine this scene, let the thought be soft and steady. The chimneys rise like towers, their breath curling into the abyss. Around them, tubeworms sway, shrimp drift, crabs climb. And hidden beneath it all, the microbes work tirelessly, unseen but essential. They do not rest, they do not waver. They take stone and gas, and with delicate alchemy, turn it into the substance of life. Let yourself drift with them for a moment. Imagine being carried in the warm plume, floating upward with minerals swirling all around. The world is dark, but you do not fear. You are part of a web that has endured for billions of years, silent and unbroken. You are in the company of the oldest creators, the microbes who make food without light, who turn poison into nourishment, who show us that life is not bound by rules, but by possibility. Perhaps, as you close your eyes, you might carry their lesson with you. That nourishment can be found in unlikely places. That what seems toxic can, in another light, be sustaining. And that even the smallest, quietest of beings may hold the secret to survival. In the deep ocean, they whisper this truth without words. Life is patient, life is inventive, and life is everywhere. In the glow of the vents, where mineral-rich waters pour like smoke from hidden chimneys, life appears in dazzling and unexpected forms. Here, the ocean floor transforms into a living tapestry, woven from threads of resilience and quiet wonder. Imagine towering colonies of giant tubeworms, their long white sheaths rising like candles in the dark, each tipped with a plume of deep crimson. These plumes are not just ornaments, but delicate gills, reaching into the vent's waters to sip the chemicals that their inner symbiotic microbes will transform into energy. A single tubeworm can grow taller than a human, yet it has no mouth, no stomach, no way to feed in the way we know. It is a creature built entirely around partnership, sustained by invisible life within. Around them, swarms of pale crabs scuttle across the rocks, their claws probing and scraping at surfaces dusted with mineral deposits. They seem like guardians of this underworld, their movements deliberate and tireless, as though they are always searching for something just out of reach. Shrimps crowd together in dense clusters, their eyes adapted to sense the faintest glimmer of vent light, glowing softly in the haze. Fish too drift through the shimmering currents, many with scales that catch what little illumination there is. Glinting like scattered stars against the blackness, it is a strange symphony. Creatures without sunlight, thriving in a place that should be barren. They build their world upon heat and stone, upon gases that would poison most other life. And yet, here, those very poisons become the threads of survival. The vents feed not only microbes, but entire cities of animals that would seem impossible elsewhere. Each species, in its own quiet way, adds another strand to this tapestry of existence. Another reminder that life will find a way wherever it can. And still, the story unfolds deeper, for these gatherings of life are not isolated. They are part of a greater rhythm, one that extends beyond the vents themselves, shaping the ocean in ways both subtle and profound. The deep ocean, for all its mystery, is mostly an empty place. Imagine drifting for hours through a world without color, where the floor stretches out in endless plains of mud and fine sediment. Here and there, scattered boulders break the monotony, and the occasional shadow of a drifting fish passes by. But for the most part, it is a desert, quiet, still, and nearly devoid of sustenance. Food in this darkness comes slowly, drifting down from the surface in tiny fragments of dead plankton, scales, and shells. Scientists call this marine snow. And though it falls continuously, the farther it sinks, the thinner and sparser it becomes. By the time it reaches these depths, there is often too little to sustain much life to eye in this vast silence. The hydrothermal vents are like sudden miracles. Against the barren backdrop, they bloom with creatures in overwhelming abundance. A traveler gliding across the seafloor would see nothing for miles. And then, as if stumbling into a secret garden, they would encounter a hive of activity. Tubeworms standing tall in crimson plumes. Shrimps packed in swarms so dense they carpet the rocks. Fish weaving through columns of smoky water. And crabs forever scuttling, forever searching. It is as if the desert floor has erupted into a thriving city, lit not by sun or fire, but by the chemistry rising from within the earth itself. The contrast is almost startling. Away from the vents, the silence resumes, vast and unbroken. No tube worms, no shimmering shoals, no busy colonies, just emptiness, stretching on into the black. But around the vents, life clings to every available surface, each species finding a way to turn raw minerals and gases into survival. These are islands of plenty, born not from the generosity of sunlight, but from the restless heat of the earth. The vents are not permanent, though. Their lifespans are fleeting in geological terms. Some may last a few decades, others centuries, but eventually they falter. The earth shifts, the flow of heat changes, and the oases go dark. And when that happens, the creatures must disperse into the emptiness once more, drifting in search of new vents, new islands of plenty, hidden in the desert of silence. And so the cycle continues. Vast stretches of ocean floor remain barren, but dotted here and there are these extraordinary sanctuaries where fire and water conspire to build something unexpected, a sudden burst of life in the loneliest places on Earth. And as we drift deeper into this story, we find that these fragile islands have consequences far beyond their rocky chimneys, echoing through the ocean in ways that reach further than the eye can follow. When we gaze back across the billions of years that separate us from the dawn of life, the picture becomes hazy, almost dreamlike. The Earth was young then, restless and fiery, its surface still scarred by impacts from space and shaped by constant volcanic upheaval. The oceans, though vast, were not the oceans we know today. They were thicker with minerals, warmed by both sunlight and the molten heat of the planet itself, and stirred by chemical storms we can only imagine. Somewhere in this primeval mixture, life stirred for the very first time. And one of the most compelling whispers from that distant past points us here to the hydrothermal vents. These chimneys, hidden deep in darkness, may have been more than refuges for unusual creatures. They may have been the very cradles where life itself began. Imagine it, hot water surging up from the Earth's crust, loaded with minerals like iron, sulfur, and carbon compounds, meeting the colder seawater around it. The mingling of these waters created boundaries, tiny membranes of minerals and bubbles where chemical gradients formed. Across these boundaries, energy could flow, sparking reactions that might otherwise never occur. It is in such gradients that many scientists believe the first molecular steps toward life were taken. Life, in its essence, is a pattern of reactions that sustains itself. To build that pattern, you need both raw materials and energy. Sunlight provides this for the surface world. But in the abyss, In that ancient time before the ozone and the calm stability of today, vents may have offered something different: a constant supply of heat, minerals, and energy locked in the form of chemical contrasts. At the edges of vent chimneys, researchers imagine primitive molecules assembling, linking together into chains. Perhaps simple proteins formed, or fragments of RNA, the molecules that, even now, lie at the heart of life's machinery. Within the labyrinths of mineral pores, these fragile chains could be sheltered, protected long enough to multiply and take the first tentative steps toward persistence. Picture a garden of stone towers under a dark ocean billions of years ago. Instead of tubeworms and crabs, these vents were alive only with invisible beginnings, molecules dancing, colliding, sometimes breaking apart, sometimes linking in ways that held meaning. Among countless failures, perhaps a rare success emerged: a cluster of molecules that could make a copy of itself, clumsily at first, then with growing fidelity. From that moment, the line of inheritance began, the unbroken thread that eventually led to every plant, every animal. And to us, the idea is both humbling and wondrous, that all of life may trace its ancestry not to sunlight sparkling on the sea's surface, but to the dark, volcanic underworld of the deep. That the same vents we now explore for their strange modern creatures may once have been nurseries of the very first cells. And while we may never know the full story, the rocks of ancient chimneys have been found, fossilized and preserved in layers of earth nearly 4 billion years old, still bearing structures that resemble the mineral pores where such chemistry could have unfolded. These remnants stand as silent witnesses, fragments of evidence whispering across time. And so, as we drift beside the vents today, watching their plumes curl upward like smoke from an eternal fire, it is easy to imagine that we are seeing echoes of our own origin, not just strange creatures thriving in the deep, but reflections of the first sparks of life, the earliest experiments in becoming. The vents remain alive with possibility, reminding us that creation does not always begin in the light, but sometimes in the dark, in hidden places where earth and ocean meet in quiet alchemy. And still, the story is not finished, for even if these vents were the first nurseries of life, they continue to shape the oceans today, feeding ecosystems, stirring the currents, and weaving themselves into the grand design of the planet. The line between ancient beginnings and present-day survival blurs here, as though the vents are timeless actors in a play that never ends, only changes scene by scene. As we linger beside the chimneys of the deep, it is tempting to think of them as curiosities, hidden pockets of life at the farthest edge of Earth's reach. But in truth, they are more than that. They are mirrors, showing us what life is capable of, what endurance and resilience can mean in forms we might never have imagined. From their dark plumes to the creatures that cluster around them, hydrothermal springs remind us that survival is not tied only to the comfort of sunlight, but to the ability to transform whatever is given: stone, gas, heat, into the possibility of thriving. It is a lesson that ripples outward, beyond the ocean, into the universe. For if life can bloom here, in a place so alien to us, could it not also bloom elsewhere? Scientists look to the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn, Europa, Enceladus, Titan, where thick shells of ice hide oceans below. Beneath those distant waters, warmed by the pull and squeeze of planetary tides, vents may also exist, spilling heat and minerals into cold alien seas. If life began here on Earth in such conditions, then perhaps it stirs even now on those faraway worlds, waiting to be found. Each time a plume of vapor bursts from Enceladus into space, carrying whispers of salts and organics, it feels as though we are catching an echo of our own deep oceans, a message across the stars that says, life may not be rare, only hidden. Back here on Earth, the vents continue to speak to us of resilience. They tell us that life bends, it adapts, it invents new ways of being. They tell us that ecosystems do not need permanence. They thrive in cycles, in places where heat may vanish and communities must scatter, only to gather again in some new oasis. And perhaps that is not so different from us. Our own lives marked by arrivals and departures, by endings that make room for beginnings. The vents, in their quiet endurance, offer us a reflection of our own nature, fragile, but endlessly resourceful. Now, slowly, we begin our return. The towers of stone and living colonies fade into the distance, swallowed once more by the darkness. We drift upward through the still waters, leaving behind the glow of mineral smoke and the restless dance of strange creatures. The silence deepens as the vents vanish from view, but it is not an empty silence. It is a silence filled with echoes. Echoes of fire meeting water, echoes of life without sunlight, echoes of the first sparks that may have given rise to everything we know. The currents carry us upward, through the midnight zone where only the faintest glimmers of bioluminescence appear. Then higher still, where the darkness softens. At last, a hint of blue returns, faint at first, then brighter, until the surface gleams above like a window to another world. We rise gently toward it, as though waking from a dream, and in this quiet ascent, we hold on to the memory of what we have seen, the resilience of life, the strangeness of its beginnings, and the endless possibilities that lie both within our own oceans and far beyond them. The story of hydrothermal springs is not just a story of the deep. It is a story of endurance, of imagination, of hope. So, as you drift now toward rest, let your thoughts float like currents, carrying with them the image of towers in the dark and creatures thriving where none should. Let the echoes of the deep remind you that even in silence, life finds a voice. Even in darkness, there can be sparks. And somewhere, perhaps, in the oceans of other worlds, those sparks may already be glowing.